It is here, one of my favorite Laowa lenses, the 7.5mm f2 has just received its official Micro Four Thirds treatment. Want to find out what that means? Good, let's go! I first learned about this dinky 7.5mm from Laowa just over a year ago when I met them in Hong Kong. I was hooked after only a few moments with it. Then I made a review video last March, and basically I was so impressed that I bought one myself. Look, I've tested so many lenses, and for one that even worth the effort of considering buying is already an achievement, let alone paying for one. Yet I'm a little surprised that this 7.5 is not even 2 years old and is already been updated. Well, this isn't surprising at all given the fact that Laowa is now an official Micro Four Thirds member. We're making their lenses can give some significant operational improvement to its users. And these improvements are not something that I can quantify easily. But let's break it down a little bit. First, let's talk about things that aren't too different to the original 7.5. Or more precisely, that now becomes a traditional thing to say about all Laowa lenses, is that it's a fantastically put together piece of metal and glass chunk. Just like its older brother, even the hood is metal. Lovely. And from the outside, the only difference you will see is the omission of the aperture ring itself, which I'll cover that later. Apart from that, they are basically twins. Speaking of twins, of course, both have very similar external dimensions. The new and younger brother is 48mm long and 53mm wide, 7mm shorter but 3mm thicker than the original. They both weigh about the same too, 170g for the older brother and 165g for the younger brother. However, that's a lightweight version of the original, which is still the lightest of all, at 150g. It was made specifically for drone, and that's even a cine version for filmmakers. This is just proof how popular this lens really is. That being said, this lens is tiny, light, and can be a great asset for any go small shoot small creative, and for those who value the essence of Micro Four Thirds. At this point, I'm unsure if Laowa will have the same variants of the new and updated 7.5, but given the popularity of the original, I think it's safe to assume a yes. However, I'm not certain because I'm not Laowa, but let's hope so. For once, I don't have to do too much of talking in this part, as you know that I really love the original 7.5, and I'm glad to report that Laowa didn't change anything in the updated version. The optical formula is identical with 13 elements in 9 group, so you should expect the same brilliant performance. If you missed my original review, I have the link up here and down in the description, but I'd rather let you see the images and draw your own conclusion on the image quality. So, what do you think? If I have to be analytical, central sharpness is excellent even at f2, corner goes a little soft wide open, but everything excels at 2.8. And I'm talking about really sharp. I don't see any difference in sharpness until f11 when diffraction starts to creep in. Vignette is present, and I would say around 3/4 of a stop at f2 and mostly gone by f2.8 and completely disappear by f4. I personally think that this lens performs wonderfully well in all conditions. If I have to be picky, the inherent barrel distortion is still there, but it's not severe to the point that it kills your images. In fact, you only notice it when you're shooting brick walls or things with lots of straight lines. but you definitely won't notice it shooting landscape or street or even vlogging, which it does a brilliant job at it. I don't often make operation as part of a lens review, as it kind of confuses people with handling. But in Laowa's case, it's different. Earlier I mentioned that this updated 7.5mm has no aperture ring. This is due to the added electronics in the lens that allow you to control the aperture via the camera. As I mentioned before, joining the Micro Four Thirds Alliance allows Laowa to access all the fundamental information on designing lenses that can communicate with any Micro Four Thirds cameras, at least in theory. The 7.5 is Laowa's third official Micro Four Thirds lens, and that features electronic aperture after the brilliant 50mm 2.8 2x macro and the 10mm ultra wide prime lenses. For most hands-on and die-hard full manual lens photographers and videographers, this latest update may not matter, but having the ability to control the lens aperture can be a night and day difference when it comes to speed of operation and sheer convenience. I've done a video on how to adapt and use full manual focus lenses on Micro Four Thirds cameras before, and certainly you can set up custom buttons for focus assist features such as peaking and magnify to speed up shooting. But you need to activate each feature independently and every time you focus. Having electronic contact means that your camera now knows there's a lens mounted on the camera, but more importantly, the electronic chip inside the lens tells the camera everything it needs to know for features that are related to it. So if you set your camera to have auto peaking and magnify in the menu, these features will automatically activate as soon as you turn the focusing ring. That's cool. This results a faster reaction time for improved accuracy for most critical moments. I mentioned that the original 7.5 was also the favorite for drone creators. Now having electronic control means the pilot can now remotely adjust the aperture on the fly. Quite literally. The same can be said about filmmakers using Micro Four Thirds cameras on compatible gimbals. And finally, you don't need to worry about manually setting the IBIS in the camera. The electronic contacts now allow full metadata to be read and identified by the camera about the lens focal length and set the IBIS accordingly. And this is awesome. So, if you're a die-hard menu guy, you can't deny that this halfway hybrid lens is great. It makes sense in so many ways for those prolific menu shooters and get their shots much quicker, more accurate, and of course, more convenient. But as this is still a new thing for Laowa, only time will tell about the reliability of its electronics. Like I said so many times, full menu lenses are much easier to live with, especially from maintenance point of view. And also, any electronics, especially nowadays with digital cameras, compatibility remains an issue. Not that it's a concern in general terms, but like all things digital, there's a chance of malfunction or conflicts between newer cameras and its firmwares. That would mean the lens firmware needs to be updated and maintained from time to time. At time of making this video, you can't update the lens firmware yourself, and Laowa does ensure that lenses will be fully compatible with all existing Micro Four Thirds cameras, before they leave the factories of course. But it's only a matter of time. Online update will be available and you will be able to update firmwares just like you would do with Olympus and Panasonic lenses via your respective update software. I know what you're thinking. If all one wants faster shooting with automations, why don't you just get a fully automated lenses just like Olympus Premium or Pro lenses? Have a clutch mechanism that engages manual focus with a slight pullback, or with a very believable and tactile action for the traditional manual lens? The answer is, well, there are photographers who love and enjoy manual shooting, and myself included. It's a very special experience, especially for filmmakers and videographers. Manual is almost a must for those fine control for creative and dynamic visuals. In the end, it's a matter of personal preference. As much as I love Olympus manual clutch, it's focused by wire. Laowa is a traditional mechanical focus unit, and you can almost compare driving with an unassisted steering wheel against power steering. It's the feel that one may prefer over others. This is also why all cine lenses are full manual focus. In the end, this is a little gem I think all Micro Four Thirds creators should have in their bags, especially for those who love shooting wide. One of the best things about this Laowa 7.5 is that it has a standard 46mm filter thread. So getting filter for this lens is extremely easy and cheap. Laowa isn't going to read the original 7.5, and this is an additional version to be sold in parallel. Well, at least how I understand so far. Laowa's updated 7.5 f2 is one of the finest Micro Four Thirds lenses in my opinion. As said, I personally own the original and love using it for street and gimbal works. The new version is every bit as good, and now you have the convenience of all the benefits I mentioned earlier. Laowa should be proud. But which version of the 7.5 should you get? Well, like I said, it's only a matter of personal preference. That's it, folks. Let me know what you think about this lens, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Remember to give me a thumbs up, and also sub if you want to stay in touch with all things Micro Four Third, and of course, Olympus. Peace!
Plane. Alright, okay. I think it can be quite interesting. Well, why am I saying interesting? Stop using interesting, man. Today we're going to put this game to its fucking paces. Just a fucking annoying. Just come on. It's dropping, my bag's dropping. We're able to do cross carry.
To wear a Billingham.
Yes, the proper way of wearing a Billingham. Like any lens review. And speaking of singing. 1 o'clock. Time to execute people. I don't know why they erected that. They're gonna have a capital punishment display right here in Greenwich. Looks like they're going to fence up and going to have a lot of spectator here. I wonder who that is.